There we go.
All right. Welcome. How are you? I'm just trying to pull up the screen share and it's not sharing the slide that I want. How do I get back to that?
The PowerPoint.
Yeah, I guess we'll use that. No, except now it's not giving me the one I want.
Do you want to get started in it? So?
Sure.
Or did Brian do that?
I have not. Go ahead, Becky. I'm going to work on getting this pulled up. There we go. And slideshow. Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for your patience. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Just real quickly, I wanted to introduce Becky Priest. She's been leading these kind of financial aid seminars for many years, decades, decade and a half, something like that. She's currently the counselor at Cambridge Academy High School in San Diego. And at the same time, her background is in financial aid and she still loves it enough to stay involved in it. So please welcome Becky Priest.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thank you. You should be outside.
Thank you. Good evening. I apologize for the traffic, which is beyond my control, but I'm apologizing anyway. So, yeah, well, 15-minute trip took almost an hour. So, but we are here. Thank you for your patience. I'm so glad to be with you guys tonight. My name is Becky Priest, as Brian said, and I'm here to talk to you all about college financial aid tonight. So let's go to the next slide. Brian, does this camera thing sit right there all the time in that part of the slide?
You should be able to click it and drag it.
Okay.
I'll work on that. You can talk. Oh, there you go.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, these are, okay, you guys have some handouts, right? Do you have handouts of the slides? Wonderful. This is kind of a long presentation. So if you need to go at any time, I'm not going to be offended if you need to get up and leave. I understand it's been a long day, long night still, maybe you have things to do ahead of you. You need to stand up and walk around back to stay awake, whatever you need to do. I'm just glad that you're here. And these are the topics that we're going to talk about tonight. So not only will you get some good introduction to just how to apply for financial aid, that's really kind of at the very end of the presentation, but you'll also get a really good background on just understanding financial aid in general. So can I ask how many people here are parents of seniors, or maybe you are a senior? Okay, that looks like the majority of everybody. What about junior families and sophomore or younger? Okay, except for maybe repeat kids. Okay, how many of you have a child already in college and you've been through this process? Okay, just 2. All right, wonderful, great. I just wanted to get an idea because there have been some changes in the last couple of years to the financial aid process. So thankfully, not many of you will be confused by that because not many of you have been through it already. It's not advancing the slide.
There we go. So you should.
All right. Thank you. All right. No difficulty out of order, but thank you so much. My background is that I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I went to school at Washington University in St. Louis, and my college work study job was working in the financial aid office there. And And while you don't major in financial aid, it's not something that's under the business school category in college. I majored in secondary education and sociology. But because my work study job had been in the financial aid office, eventually after a couple of years, it led to me working full-time in the financial aid office. And so I worked in a part of the office that processed financial aid for incoming freshman students and transfer students. So I have literally read tens of thousands of financial aid forms and processed financial aid awards for many, many students over the years. And my specialty is understanding, kind of coming into that university setting and knowing how financial aid works, and also then helping families to understand that. So the reason that this matters to me in terms of talking with you guys about financial aid is that from 30 years of experience, I can tell you that I know that sometimes families are approaching this topic a little too late in the college search process. So I want you to be equipped and armed with tools at this point, even though the majority of you are senior families, to build your child's college list well at this point. And if you are a parent of a junior, then you have some time to process and to think about how to build out that college list so that you can take into account the financial aid policies and procedures that will exist in the larger landscape. So too many families are just like, well, we're just going to apply and we hope it works out. We'll figure it out when we get there. Well, I want you to be able to figure it out ahead of time. Financial aid does not have to be this big, huge mystery that we so often, are hit with and confused with. There are actual tools that you can use to walk through the process. And so we're going to talk about those as we go through the presentation tonight. But the biggest place to start is just understanding that your situation is going to be unique from other families' situations. There are many, many factors that go into this whole process, and that's why it can feel very confusing and especially unfair when maybe it feels like money that you might or might not qualify for or might or might not get are different from somebody else's around you it feels like your situation looks exactly the same. There's actually many, many factors that go into the financial aid process, and so that's what this graphic is meant to kind of capture, is that if any one of those small bullet items is different from one family to the next, then your financial aid outcome, your financial aid award from a college or what you qualify for could be very different from someone who's sitting next to you or someone that you think looks exactly like you in terms of a financial situation. So all of those things matter, but the reason the college bubble is orange is because that's really the main piece to understand tonight. And this is the part that we're going to drill down into a little bit, is just understanding the college landscape when it comes to how to maximize and receive a financial aid award. That's the one thing you have control over in the process, or at least probably the most control over, is where your child applies to college. You don't have any control over the federal policies. You don't have any control over the formula that determines whether or not you qualify for financial aid. You may have some control over how much money you earn or what your assets are. But by and large, the biggest piece that you have to control is where your child applies. And so that's the biggest piece that I want you to take away from this tonight. So there are some mistakes that we all make as families kind of going into this process. And these are the typical things that I hear. Again, after many years of doing this, I don't want you to abort the process too early because you think either, we're not going to qualify for financial aid, that we're just not even going to put certain colleges on the list, or that, well, my kid's really smart and they'll just have to get a merit scholarship to go to college. Well, if only we lived in a meritocracy where, the best students got the best merit aid, that would be nice, but that's not how it works. There are many things about the college admissions and financial aid process that can feel very unfair, but by and large, these are mistakes that we could make a little too early. I'll just leave that at that. There's a lot more I could say there, but for the sake of time, I'm going to move on. Okay, so if you can walk away with one piece of understanding tonight, it's how to think broadly about this process. So if I can get you to think kind of in categories, because otherwise it feels like this really mess of a million. Like where do I even get money? What can I qualify for? Can my child get anything? Can I get anything? So here are the three biggest categories for you to think about tonight is the type of aid. What kind of money are we even talking about? Where is it coming from? And then what am I eligible for? And when I say I mean your family as a whole, and specifically then drilling down to your child who will be the college student. So it's really talking about them, but obviously the financial aid process will look at you as a family unit. Okay. So if you can keep these three categories, or really the first two categories in mind as we go throughout, and I'll remind you as we go through it. Sorry, that's a little off. Who knows? I don't understand technology sometimes, but it showed up fine on my screen. So it's one of the things we deal with, it seems like, when we translate the presentations, but that's okay. Need-based aid and merit-based aid. Every dollar of financial aid falls into one of two categories. It's either need-based or it's merit-based. So that's your first place of understanding is what kind of money are we even talking about? Do you think you would qualify for need-based aid based on your income and assets? Or is your child going to mostly qualify for merit aid based on things about them, qualities, performative qualities, grades, test scores, those kinds of things can come into the process. So those are the two large categories of financial aid, every dollar. So first understand that, because that will lay the biggest foundation for just kind of how to think about the college landscape and the college process going forward. There's information on each of these slides that I may not cover, but I try to be pretty thorough in what I provide you with so that you can, if you need to go back and look at it later and think, oh, that's right, Becky did talk about that form, or Becky did talk about that kind of colleges. There's a lot of information in the subtext here. The types of colleges that award these two different types of aid are different from each other. So colleges that are awarding largely need-based aid are the types of colleges that are, if you just think, and I didn't put this on the slide, but when it says endowment income, think old and rich. So Harvard, okay? Colleges that are, 200 years old, 150 years old. They've had a long time to build up an endowment, and they have a lot of donations every year. So when a college can live off of an endowment income, that means that they can robustly award need-based financial aid. That is a very small number of colleges in this country. It really is the most highly selective colleges. Selectivity is referring to a specific admissions term, meaning how many students can they admit of, how many can apply. So a college like Harvard that has a 3 or 4% admit rate, they are largely awarding need-based aid. In fact, that's all they have. They don't even have any merit-based aid. They made an agreement a long time ago, all of the Ivy League colleges, to award only need-based aid. So we'll unpack whether or not, how to know what types of things go into need-based aid and whether or not you qualify for it as we get further into the presentation. This is all still laying kind of the groundwork. Merit-based aid is awarded by the vast majority of colleges out there, because it is used as a way to try to entice your child and to try to entice you to sign on the dotted line to come to that college. There are exceptions to this in terms of types of colleges, but this, like I said, this is the majority of colleges will award merit-based aid. So there's three main sources of financial aid: the government, the college and the university, and everything else. Those are called private sources or outside scholarships. We'll get to that in a few slides too. And just so that you know that you're not missing anything, if there are parents in the room who went to college, everything is the same as when you went to college. Things really haven't changed in 30 or 40 years. And that's why I've been able to stay current on these things, but I stay current also because I'm still a member of financial aid organizations, and I stay very informed on this topic, even though I'm not working in a university financial aid office anymore. But these are the components of a typical financial aid award. So if you are not familiar with college or college in this country, perhaps, like I said, these are the components of a typical financial aid award. It might be made up of scholarships and grants. That's your free money. That's why it's called gift aid. And then it might be made up of some work study money that's given. The student has to work, file hours, and get paid like a regular paycheck. Okay. And then there's borrowing involved for most colleges. We'll talk about borrowing tonight too, and as we get further into the presentation. Let's start off with the cost of college, the bad news. I'll just let this sink in for a second while I take a drink. One thing that we're going to comment on, just a minute of housekeeping, the copyright information, the 2018, that's just referring to the background graphic on the slide. That's not the slide presentation I update all the time. So I don't want you to think this is old information. I was actually updating this just a couple hours ago. So, again, thinking categories. When you're thinking about how do I maximize my receipt of free money for college, how do I minimize the amount that I need to pay, you have to think about what type of college you want to aim for. A separate, maybe, from what your child is qualified for in terms of academics for type of college. There's different types of college. Not all colleges are created equal, but there are many, many, many good colleges in this country. Many places that afford a lot of great opportunity. And so this slide breaks them down into 3 types of colleges. Broadly, think broadly. Okay, I listed a few examples, but there's hundreds of examples behind each one of these. So your first category that I've broken down here are your regional private colleges. So these are as opposed to a public college. A public college are your state-supported, state-funded universities. We'll talk about those in a second. But if we just look at a couple of private colleges, you can see the cost ranges pretty broadly there, but it's still really expensive. And that number is kind of an all-in cost. That includes tuition, food, and housing. So food and housing is room and board, and and any required fees. This is the cost for this year. The current people who are attending these colleges this year, this is the cost. It will go up next year. The cost of college goes up every year. You can expect about a 4% increase. So just when I was updating these slides, Point Loma Nazarene right here in San Diego last year was 55,000 and something. So that's how much it went up just one year. And the others went up about something similar. So right away, when we're talking about what are my cheapest options for college, it really falls into this next category, your state schools or your public colleges. So your cheapest option for college is to start at community college and eventually transfer to a 4-year college, okay? Your next cheapest option is to go to a Cal State University and live at home and commute. So here we have access to 2 Cal States right in my backyard. We have San Diego State University and Cal State San Marcos. So the tuition at a Cal State is set by the state of California, and it's supported by your tax dollars. If you live at home and go to a Cal State, then your tuition payment will be under $10,000 a year. This is where the vast majority of college students in this country go to college. This is what they do. 80% of college students go to a state university within commuting distance of their house, and they live at home or in an apartment or something, with friends. When you want a 4-year on-campus residential experience, then the cost jumps drastically. So that's the part that you have to take into account for that bottom category. So when you look at your nationally known selective schools, not only are they fancy and famous, and that's why they can charge that much money, but they're also mostly endowment income driven schools that are awarding need-based aid. So you can start connecting the dots between the cost of college and what kind of financial aid they're awarding. So like that last category of schools, Stanford, USC, there's others, Harvard, Pomona, Caltech, MIT, Washington University where I worked. These are very, very expensive schools, but most families that go to them don't pay that price. Okay, but they also don't have merit scholarships, so your smart child can't go to Stanford and get a merit scholarship. If you get those flyers in the mail from college financial planners, and I always have a testimony about somebody saying, come to our talk because, you know, Mr. So-and-so financial planner got my child all kinds of free money at Stanford. Well, there aren't merit scholarships at Stanford, so if a child got a free ride to Stanford, it meant they qualified for a lot of need-based aid. Okay, let's come back to that center category for a second. So after community college and your next affordable option are your Cal States and commuting, and when you add that room and board for a Cal State to live on campus, it's actually the cost is closer to about $30,000 a year. So that says $24,000 plus to live on campus. That's because all the Cal States can charge a little bit different for tuition and room and board. Yeah, the tuition is set by the state, but then each campus adds fees on top of that. So, like for example, San Diego State and Cal Poly SLO, the two most popular Cal States out of the 23 that exist in California, 23 of them, they're the most expensive. So to go to San Diego State and Cal Poly SLO and live on campus will cost you almost $30,000 a year. Some of the other less popular Cal States will cost you less than that, closer to that $24,000 to live on campus. Then you have the UC system, another great public system available to us here in California, supported by your tax dollars, just slightly more expensive than a Cal State. The tuition is about double. So if you were lucky enough to be admitted to UC San Diego and go there and live at home, then your tuition will be about $15,000 a year. Not too bad for a world-class education at UCSD. But add living on campus and you hike that price up. And in reality, again, the total cost for UC is actually closer to $38,000 or $39,000 by the time you add the fees and the other pieces associated with it. So those are your public California options in order of affordability. When you go to private options or public colleges in another state, then you jump to a different price category. But that slide where I talk about don't make these mistakes, you want to be careful to not say, well, we're just going to take Point Loma Nazarene off the list because the sticker price is $60,000 a year. You may receive enough merit-based financial aid at Point Loma Nazarene to bring that cost down to less than a UC, maybe. Probably not less than a Cal State. So if you want a 4-year residential experience, I'm just going to cut to the chase here. It is very hard to get a 4-year residential experience for much less than $30,000 a year. No matter how qualified your child is, unless you qualify for a lot of need-based aid and government grant and government assistance, and we'll get to that in a second, what those are, how you can qualify for them. Unless you qualify for those, just know that a 4-year residential experience is kind of hard to get for much less than about $30,000 a year. There are options. There are some good options out there. But this is on average. Obviously, there are exceptions to this. Now let's talk about public colleges in another state briefly. I just picked the University of Arizona. Pick any state. Because you don't pay taxes in Arizona, the tuition for your child, who's a California resident, to go to Arizona or any other state will be about triple on average to go to any other state as to what that state's residents pay. And that's true here too. For an out-of-state resident, for somebody to come from Massachusetts to come to a UC, it will cost them about $72,000 a year. Okay, so for your child to go to another state, you can see the tuition premium there, and then adding in kind of that room and board that sits anywhere between, for most colleges, anywhere between $14,000 and $19,000 approximately. Okay, for that room and board. You can see what the total cost for University of Arizona is. But good news is University of Arizona has a lot of merit scholarships. So they're one of the few states that actually wants to attract students from California. And they have the ability for that cost to be about $20,000 less than that if your child has really good grades. So they issue merit scholarships based on GPA, and that'll take about 20 and then on down 18, 16, 14, depending on the GPA tier level from that 42.3 that you see as the tuition cost. So there are ways to get public institutions in other states for less money, oftentimes than even going to a public institution here in California. We'll talk about that in a few slides too, a little bit more. So that's the bad news. It's the cost of college. The good news is that if you play your cards right, college really is a buyer's market. Now, the exception to this is not a buyer's market if you want to go to flagship state schools or highly selective colleges like Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, Yale. Okay, so, but the rest of colleges that are out there, they very much are afraid every year that they're not going to meet their enrollment goals, and many of them don't meet their enrollment goals. So these numbers come from an annual survey of college deans. You can look it up, it's out there, and it'll tell you how many colleges really are, concerned about not meeting those enrollment goals. And so that's why you're not often going to pay that sticker price at those regional private colleges that's published. So Point Loma Nazarene is not going to cost anybody in this room $60,000 a year. Nobody. Because Point Loma Nazarene is discounting a third bullet. They're using tuition discounts to bring that cost down to try to get you to enroll. They use merit aid as the enticement to say, well, how low do we need to go to get you to sign on the dotted line? And your amount, and your amount, and your amount, and your amount that they might give you for being able to sign on the dotted line is all going to be different. Okay, what's your child's GPA? What's their test scores? What are they bringing to the table? Are they going to be a football player for us? Or are they going to be a French horn player for us? What can we do as a college to stack some of those merit scholarships and bring that price down? And this is a technique that is used by those regional private colleges. So hopefully you can kind of start seeing some of these categories come together in terms of how, what type of college we're talking about and what type of money they offer. So it's important if you want to get the best deal. How do you shop for a good deal? How do you be a smart college shopper and find those deals? Is that you need to look for colleges that have above a 50% admit rate, because those are going to be the ones that need your student to come there. If they have less than 50% admit rate, they've got a lot of other students besides your wonderful child that can go to that college that will be equipped to pay whatever that college feels like charging. Okay, so that's a big part of the strategy. And families, be smart about this. You do not have to say to your wonderful child, well, wherever you get in, we will just figure out a way to pay for it. Okay, parents, you need to not mortgage your own futures. Okay, you need to be smart, and it's totally within your authority and your purview to say, this is how much money our family can pay for college. So we're gonna have to figure out how you can fit within that, and you're gonna get a great college degree. Let's not worry about the fact that it's not Harvard or Stanford if that's not what you're looking at. And we can be really grateful and thankful that there are so many college options in this country. So now we're going to talk about some of the sources of aid. Now that I've given you kind of a good foundation for starting to understand the landscape. So remember, on the sources of aid, there's three: the government, federal and state, the college itself, and then all the other outside sources that are out there. Three sources of aid. We're on the first one: government aid. What's available from the federal government? These are the federal government financial aid programs. You've probably heard of the ones on that top row: the federal Pell Grant, the federal work study, and the student loan program. Those are the three workforce programs of the federal government. Again, your tax dollars at work. Pell Grants are available to families whose incomes are generally under $50,000 or $60,000 a year. So if your income as a household falls under that range, then you qualify for that maximum amount of Pell Grant. And that's good news, because that covers your tuition at a community college or at a Cal State. Yay, that's awesome. Okay, I understand that a Pell Grant doesn't go very far when we're talking about a $50,000 or $90,000 a year college, but again, college is accessible. These programs make college accessible to anybody from any background. So they're there. Work study is something that can be awarded by the college. Again, a student works and earns the money to pay for ongoing expenses. It's not money that goes towards the bill. It's money that goes towards toothpaste and toilet paper and Pop-Tarts and things like that, okay? So that's what work study is meant to do, or your gasoline for your car, or whatever. And then there's borrowing, the student loan program. Now, if you are a veteran, I highly, highly encourage you to get in touch with the Veterans Affairs Department here in San Diego and see what veterans benefits are available to you through those programs. There are several, and I'll just leave it at that because that could actually be a pretty complicated conversation. There are a couple of other really niche programs that are available from the government, but it's not a thing like where you need to go searching for those, because unless you're part of a very specific population like coal miners or 9/11 survivors or things like that, you're not, there's nothing else you're missing. That's what I'm trying to get at through this slide. These are the main things, and this is what's available from the federal government. What's available from the state government? We have 3 wonderful state programs. You may have heard of the CAHS program. And there's also the UC Blue and Gold program and the California Middle Class Scholarship Program. All of these programs have income and asset cutoffs or limitations. I believe there was a separate handout for the Cal Grant income and asset ceilings. It's a chart in the middle of the page that helps you to see based on family size whether or not you would qualify for the Cal Grant. So for a family of 4, that's the first bullet on my slide. Generally, incomes below $135,000 a year qualify. So again, we're talking about household income. And what year, I'll cut to the chase on that. We're talking, if you have a senior, we're talking about 2023 income. So I'll get to that in a few slides, but just so I'm answering that question for you, because I know that's a question that comes up at this point as well. What year are we talking about? For a senior, we're talking about a household income from 2023. If it's $135,000 or below, you will qualify for Cal Grant. What does Cal Grant cover for you? Cal Grant covers your tuition at a Cal State or a UC. That's awesome. Those are great state programs. Okay, but now you know where are you in relation to that number, or you can see on that graph or on that chart about your family size. Notice that there's also an asset ceiling. You also have to have assets commensurate with that income. You can't have a bunch of money in the bank. It is not looking at home equity as an asset, but anything else, money in the bank, stocks, bonds, investments, college savings accounts, those all count as part of that asset calculation on the extra handout for the Cal Grant. And then if you were to go to a private school, Portland, Missouri, Stanford, fill in the blank, then if you qualify for Cal Grant, then the Cal Grant program will give you that very strange number of money toward a private school. That's great. Okay. If you qualify for Cal Grant at a private school, you will probably also receive lots of other financial aid from that private school too. So it's not like Cal Grant will be the only thing. But at a state institution, at a public institution, you now know what's available to you. The things that were on the previous screen from the federal government, or the things on this screen that are available from the state government. That's your state aid for a state institution. Okay, government school, government money. This is what there is, and now you know whether or not you qualify for it. Are there any questions about the federal government money or the state government, state money before I move on? Yes.
Does this apply also for transfer students, or it has to be at freshman level?
This applies for transfer students too, yes. Yes, you mean coming from like community college to a 4-year? Yes. Yes, this also applies to community college, so it'll cover your tuition also at community college. That's not on the slide because my recommendation normally is if you know your child is going to go full time at community college and finish it in 2 years and be on the transfer pathway to go to 4-year college right away, then yeah, maybe you do want to use that Cal Grant money to help pay for it. But community college costs is probably less than your grocery bill for a couple months. So it's not very expensive. And so it can benefit you to not access some of that until you need it. It can benefit you. It doesn't always benefit you, but it can, okay? There's complex answers to all of this, but yeah. Any other questions about it?
Qualifies student for a state grant, California grant, or are they?
You're asking if they're independent, yes, yes.
that's-
Although you can see a lot of overlap, right? So yes, a student can get both the federal Pell Grant if your income's under $50,000 or $60,000 a year, and the Cal Grant. You would qualify for both of those if if you're a California resident going to college in Cal Grant. Cal Grant's only applicable to colleges in California.
Question, on the Cal Grant, for a family of four, you said 135 is the max. Is that gross or is that after deductions and?
Great question. He asked if the 135 ceiling and of the other ceilings as well on the chart are gross or after gross income or after deductions. It is gross income. It is gross income. Yes. Great question. She asked on the asset ceilings, what's included in the assets? Does that include a 401k? It does not include a 401k. Thank you for bringing that up. So anything in a qualified retirement account and your home equity does not count in that asset calculation.
Even though you put money into it from the paycheck, that still gets counted.
Yes, the money that you remove out of your paycheck to put into those 401ks does get counted in income. That's part of your income. Yes. Yes. Yes, sir. It's AGI with things added back like that, because your deductions for your 401k are taken out before your AGI is calculated.
Is that an asset?
That's a complicated situation. I can't give you an easy answer to. I can talk to you afterwards. Yeah. Yes. Business money may or may not be included depending on the type of college, but yeah. And it depends on how it shows up on your income too. Yeah, whether it's a corporation or a sole proprietorship or whatever, there's a lot of nuances to it. Yes, sir.
So are you, when it comes to assets, are we talking about cash, like liquid assets only, like bank accounts, stocks, bonds? anything
Right,
like
yeah,
that?
he's asking what counts as an asset. We'll get to that in a couple of slides. Yeah, great question. And then just one more for right here, and then we'll move on. Yeah.
Such like this, somebody mentioned like some kind of compact between the western states that if you want something, on the house, can you expand on that, please?
Yes, I will. Yeah. You guys are great. I love it. You're dialed in. You're asking all the right questions. Yes, there are agreements between the western states, and I will get there shortly. Okay, so remember, 3 sources of aid: government, the college, and everything else. All right, so now we are talking about what's available from colleges. So to understand what's available from colleges, you kind of have to think about what are the categories of colleges that are out there. So I've broken this roughly into 6 groups of colleges. And I know on the previous slide with the costs, I broke it into regional private colleges, public colleges, very expensive elite colleges. We're going to break it down a little bit even further than those 3 types. So the first one are your in-state public schools. Okay, we've talked about that a little bit. You can see the fine print over there. So mainly what's available from your community college, your Cal States, and your UCs and other public institutions are all the types of aid that we just talked about. Pell Grant, Cal Grant, work study, student loans. Those are your main things. Then let's talk about on the other end of the spectrum, your elite private colleges. So those are your 95 approaching. Next year, we will break the $100,000 barrier for cost of college for 4 years. I believe I'm taking bets. I'm placing my bets on USC and I'm going to cross that one first, but there's a few in the running for that. So there's about 70 colleges in that category that have admit rates that are under 25%. They're highly, somebody coined the term a few years ago, highly rejected colleges. They're rejecting more students than they admit. These are the colleges that meet 100% of financial need for everybody who applies. We're going to get into that a little bit more. They usually have no merit scholarships. and they are high cost. So if you are a family who makes a lot of money and you don't qualify for need-based aid and your child can qualify to go to that kind of college, then you need to be prepared to pay full price because they only have need-based aid. We'll talk later in the presentation about how to know if you qualify for need-based aid. That's a big thing I want you to know when you leave here tonight is what you can qualify for. Are you going to qualify for need-based aid or not? Next, categories of colleges. This is what this gentleman was just asking about, out-of-state public flagship schools. So very popular out-of-state flagship schools in other states, you will pay full price for most of those. So think your famous ones like University of Michigan, University of Virginia, University of Washington, no scholarships for out-of-state students. So if you want to go to one of those colleges and have them on your list, just know that they're going to cost you $65,000 a year or more. You need to look on their website and find out their costs. Don't ask Google, go straight to the college websites. College websites are the best source of information. Don't listen to gossip channels, don't listen to your neighbor, just go straight to the college websites, okay? That's so important. So conversely, this may mean you were thinking, oh, grandma's from Michigan. Wouldn't that be cool if you could go to the University of Michigan, honey? Well, if you want to pay $65,000 a year, yeah, put University of Michigan on the list. But now that you know it's going to cost you $65,000 a year, maybe that takes it off the list. So this is part of why I get excited about educating you about this, because you can just know, oh, good, done, not on the list, or on the list, or whatever the situation may be. Then there's the public schools who do offer out-of-state students scholarships. And there are a bunch of these in a consortium called the WUE Consortium. That's the WUE that you see there. That stands for Western Undergraduate Exchange. The website for that is wishy.edu. Don't ask me why it's not WUE. It's wishy. And so you can go to that website and find out. So it's all the Western states from Canada to Mexico, from Colorado on westward, including Alaska and Hawaii. All the Western states participate in the WUE Consortium. So what this means is you might be able to go to mostly a state level college in another state, not a university but a state level college. So like Colorado State, Colorado Springs, or Arizona State, Northern Arizona University, University of Nevada, Reno, not Las Vegas, that's the flagship. These schools all offer WUE discounts. What is a WUE discount? It means that you won't pay that full 300% premium for your child for out-of-state tuition at those colleges. It varies greatly from college to college, and that's why you just need to go to this website to figure it out. But you can get, for example, you can go to University of New Mexico, or University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, or Southern Utah University for way less than it would cost you to go to a UC right here in your own state. Way less. Like some of them are even less than a Cal State. So there are some really good bargains to be had in this category. And the colleges that are part of WUE often make it really easy for students from California to come there. They're not impacted. They want your student. They have plenty of seats. So that's some things to think about in terms of that college planning. Okay, yes, sir, you have a question.
Are there opportunities for qualifying for residency in out-of-state colleges after your first year?
Great question. He asked if there's opportunities to qualify for out-of-state for in-state residency in another state. The answer is it depends, but largely no. So Utah is a state, for example, that you can qualify for residency in if you live there for an entire year without leaving. Okay, so you can get residency, but then you can't get WUE money the first year from University of Utah. So it gets complicated, but by and large, most states have made it very difficult for you to qualify for in-state rates in their state. It didn't used to be that way, parents. When we went to college, you could just, kind of move there and stay on a resident and change your license plate and all that. And you can't do that anymore. States have tightened down. They really want to see that parents live there and earn income and a paycheck in that state, or that you've graduated from high school there to get in-state rates. California does that for people that want to come here from other states. So make it very difficult. So not a great strategy, but there are a couple of states where that might work out for you. Okay, last two categories of college. What kind of money is available from what kind of college? That's the question we're answering right now. Category number 5, private colleges that will accept your student. So we're not talking about your Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, Yale. We're not talking about the colleges with under 25% of it, right? Right now, we're talking about the colleges that sit typically between a 30 and a 50% of merit. These are colleges that they're popular, they're known, they're kind of prestigious, but they're not desperate for your student. Okay, so they don't have to offer a lot of merit. These are colleges like Loyola Marymount in LA, Chapman University, American University in Washington, D.C., Texas Christian University. There's a bunch of these colleges that fall into this category. These are colleges that are usually pretty expensive, and but they will also offer you a pretty decent amount of merit aid. Not so much need-based aid, they're not going to meet need. The only colleges that meet need are those 70 famous, highly rejected colleges. They're not going to meet need, but you might qualify for a $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 merit scholarship. That's great. Yeah, students get really excited. Big fat scholarship. That's great. That's great. But that college still costs $75,000 a year. I'm really glad you got a $30,000 scholarship, but that still leaves the cost of it at $45,000 a year. It's really hard to get, for example, USD, private Catholic college here in San Diego, below $50,000 for an on-campus, 4-year residential experience. It's really hard. Their maximum merit scholarship is $28,000, although the sticker price of $75,000. Okay, so if that's the zone that you can afford and fit in, then great, apply to those kind of colleges, because it's very likely that your child with decent grades will get into those colleges. You just won't get a lot of money. Okay, so then I'll tell you a lot too about your own college fit. Do you fit with other families at that kind of college? So that's a thing to think about as well. Then the last category are all the other private schools, any other college that doesn't fit into one of the previous categories. These are colleges that will pursue your child. These are colleges that are very worried about meeting their enrollment goals, like Point Loma Nazarene, sticker price of $60,000, nobody pays it. And they can get your costs down, definitely lower than a UC, probably not lower than a Cal State. But for most of the colleges in this category, regardless of where they start with their sticker price, your net price that you will end up paying is typically around $30,000 to $40,000 a year, probably between 30 and 35. That's about where it falls for most families. I'm making sweeping generalities. There's obviously exceptions. Yes, some schools have full tuition and full ride merit scholarships, but those are super competitive. Even at your non-competitive colleges that fall into this category number 6, meaning most people who apply are getting in, non-competitive college, you still have to be a superstar to get that full tuition scholarship academically and every way else. So I hope that helps kind of differentiate what's available from the colleges. And this is where I want you to take that strategy then and apply that to where you think, what is my affordability zone? Am I going to qualify for any of that government money? What type of college fits my child? A small, a large, a public, a close to home, far away, urban, rural, all of those factors that go into kind of thinking about that college list and then build it intelligently based on what you kind of now know are going to be generalities of where the affordability is going to fall for your family. Yes. She asked about what about international schools like in Canada or the UK or other places. So typically, if you're thinking about those kinds of schools, you need to be prepared to pay full price for an international student. So I think last time I looked, Oxford in England is about $35,000 a year, less than a UC. That's super hard to get into. But can you go to colleges in Canada? Yeah, for about that same, somewhere maybe between $25,000 and $35,000 a year, US dollars. you know, to convert and go on the website and see the prices. So a lot of times, some colleges in other countries, whether or not you have citizenship there, can actually be a little bit cheaper. But your student, if they're a citizen of the US and they don't have dual citizenship somewhere else, they will apply to those colleges as an international student. And then that complicates the process for admissions. So just have a heads up on that. Yeah, there are some great colleges to be had overseas. Yeah. The next couple of slides are just some examples, just some screenshots of things just to show you more, to make concrete what I've already said. So this is a screenshot straight from the University of New Mexico's website, where it tells you that if you have, this is the Louis qualification for University of New Mexico. Remember, so this is the out-of-state flagship, part of the Western Consortium of colleges. If you have above a 2.8 GPA or above an 18 ACT, then you're getting 1.5 times what a New Mexico resident would pay. Again, that's about comparable to a Cal State. But if your GPA is above 3.0, then that amount you get off per year, that basically brings the price down, as the text says, to the New Mexico resident. Kind of nice. Again, way less than a UC and sometimes cheaper than a Cal State flagship school with a great medical school attached. My neighbor across the street went there. He had a great time. This is a screenshot from Point Loma Nazarene University. So some colleges will publish this. The Point Loma Nazarene, remember, it's in that last category of colleges. That number 6 category, above the 50% admit rate, wants your student to come there very badly, and will discount that $60,000 a year sticker price based on, what do we see here? What is that based on? They publish this right on their website. The GPA and or test scores. So the most that Point Loma offers is $22,000 from an automatic scholarship. Then there can be other scholarships that could be stacked onto that bring that cost down even further. Again, is your child going to play football for them? Are they going to play French horn for them? Are they going to play accompany the choir with piano? You know, all kinds of things that may bring that price down further than just that top tier scholarship amount of money. Yes.
That right, under criteria, is that and or is it GPA and SAT or GPA or SAT?
It's or, because Point Loma is a test optional college. Yeah. Actually, well, so what it says, actually right under the word criteria is any 2 of the 3 qualify. So unweighted or weighted. So see, they'll take either an unweighted or a weighted GPA. That's good news. Weighted is always better. Let's use that one. Okay. This is a screenshot straight from Stanford's website. So what does it look like for a college who does meet 100% of financial needs? So this goes back to one of the very first slides where I said, don't make the mistake of writing off the college too soon because you think it's $95,000 a year. It might not be. So you know where the cutoffs were for government. Now these are not cutoff numbers. Let's be clear. These are kind of average numbers of where a typical family, let's say, who makes somewhere between $250,000 and $300,000 a year, you are still going to get almost $35,000 off of Stanford costs. So you won't pay full price. They have need-based aid if you qualify for it. They're a school that meets 100% of need. So if the formula says you qualify for it, they will give you every dollar you qualify for. And in this case, that means you're going to pay $55,000 a year for college at Stanford. Stanford has a 2% of it. Let's just make sure that you understand that too. Yeah. Stanford has a 2% admit rate. Okay.
That rate reflects that he's not based on need, right? It's also a high minimum GPA that is not shown there.
No, need-based aid is not calculated using GPA. It's only calculated on income and assets. Admissions, GPA matters, but it's not the only thing that matters at a place like Stanford. Okay, let's keep going. All right, we've covered the first 2 sources of aid. What's available from the government what's available from colleges, generally understanding the type of colleges cover the third category where money comes from, everything else. This is the one that parents I know, well, like, hey, child, you better apply for scholarships. Parents, let me just ease your mind on this. This is often not worth pursuing. Often. Most of the time, 99% of the time, not worth pursuing outside scholarships. Your strategy is in applying to the right kind of college that you can afford. I will say that again multiple times throughout this presentation. You are not going to find money hidden under couches, okay? Your child is not going to qualify for a lot of the money that's there from outside scholarships because most of them are very, very specific. And you might be competing against a very large national pool of rock star students, okay? So, the places to look for scholarships, yes, apply if you are a perfect fit for a scholarship. My friend's son was in a bowling league, they had a $700 scholarship, all you had to do was fill out the paperwork. Boom, he got $700. Woohoo, that doesn't go very far in paying a college bill, and it's a one-time source of money. Now, there are a lot of other sources of money that are one-time sources of money, but I would say there are very small amounts of money. That's that 1, 2, 3, all that weigh the costs of time and stress spent applying against odds of winning one-time small amounts of money. $1,000, $2,000, and I know what you're gonna say. You're gonna say, but Becky, every little bit adds up. Okay, sure, but your child is also gonna be really tired of writing essays. Okay, and you go, here, honey, can you write one more essay to get this maybe kind of money that, okay, it'll pay $1,000 for freshman year. You have to weigh that cost in your own house, okay? So the places to look for money are places that are good fits and narrow restrictions, like, are you on a bowling league that gives you some money? Then yes, fill out the application for it. Do you have scholarships through your employer? Parents, you should check. That's a big thing to check for. My husband's company has scholarships for children of employees. So, you know, think about that kind of a thing. Do you go to a church or a synagogue or something that offers money to go to maybe a college in your denomination? That might be something to look at as well. So it is a myth that there are millions of dollars in unclaimed money out there. It has been a myth since 1974 when somebody said it on the Good Morning America show. And so you do not need to look for it. The reality is that most scholarship programs work hard to give away their money, and they give it away every year. So when you hear people say this, they're probably not insiders in the financial aid field, and I would just shy away from those, including most of the scholarship search services that are out there, because they take your child's information and sell it. Okay, Going Merry is one website that does not sell your child's information, but at the same time, they're still gonna give you and your child a lot of spam and probably not result in any money. So I do not think that this is an avenue that's worth it. So yay, I've just saved you some work and answered a whole bunch of questions in terms of how can my child look under every couch cushion for a few nickels. This isn't the route to go. There are 2 exceptions. The San Diego Foundation. Do you want to say anything about that, Brian, or?
Actually, on the back, we got that, the website for SC Foundation for local scholarships. And then also, we have a website listed there too, that we update regularly with ones that, get advertised to us, and we want to pass on to you. Almost always those are gonna be local ones.
Local scholarships make sense to apply to because then you're competing against a much smaller pool of applicants than if you're applying to a national scholarship. Now, if you have a rock star kid who has been in the Olympics or on Shark Tank or cured cancer, then by all means apply for those rock star scholarships. But that doesn't apply to most of us. Even some of us with very high achieving children. Okay, these are scams. Just be smart. Don't give out personal information. I think we all understand that at this point. Okay. That was all foundation of trying to understand financially. Now we're going to talk about, are you eligible for anything on the need-based side? So we're going to define some terms first, and then we're going to go through some examples. So To know if you're gonna qualify for need-based aid, first, we have to understand what is the cost of the college that we're talking about. Is it a $30,000 a year college or is it a $95,000 a year college? That matters. These are the things that go into determining that cost of the college. There's the billable charges and there's the variable charges. There's still things you pay, but you don't have to owe them to the school. They just go to your credit card. But your child can't enroll at that college until that bill is paid. So that's the category you really have to worry about, the far left category on there. Cost of attendance. Then the next term to define is your student aid index. If you've been around and maybe you know a little bit about financial aid, you've heard it before. This has formerly been called the EFC, or your expected family contribution. The federal government changed the name of that last year. So it's now called the student aid index, but a lot of people still call it the EFC. So if you hear those two terms, they're interchangeable. The EFC is your number. The SAI is your number. This is a number that will be determined by the federal financial aid that will crunch all of your income and assets and see if you qualify for any assistance from the government or from the college itself. This is a part of the financial aid process that is the most unfair because there's been nobody ever who got an output from the federal formula in terms of here's the number you can pay for college that said, oh good, I didn't thought that's what I can pay that. Never, okay. Truly, this is a thing where it's like you're shocked when you see this number. So even for the Harvards and Stanfords of the world who meet need, that number that they're still going to expect you to pay is probably not what you can write a check for. Okay. Instead, Harvard used to say on their website, we know this isn't what you can write a check for. What it is, what your EFC or your SAI is a representation of is what you can afford to absorb over time. So think about that. What does time mean? Past, present, future. What have you saved? What can you contribute out of current earnings? Who's going to borrow and from where? And so the income and the assets are what goes into this determining your student aid index. And we'll get into that. Here's a really detailed screen for those of you that want the really big deal details. This is what counts on the income side. Those are the things that the allowances are the things the formula takes into account. The age of the parent, for example, is that last one there that's not cracked out. The federal formula is used up until last year, took into account the number of children you have in college at the same time. It doesn't anymore. Don't ask me why. That seems like it should matter. Then on the asset side, these are the things that go into the asset calculation. So the number at the top, that red number, 5.64, is the maximum amount that your assets will be assessed at as being available to pay for college. So if you have $100,000 in cash in the bank, that means $5,640 of that is assessed as being available to pay for college. But previous slide, remember that mostly that formula is determining what you can pay for college largely based on your income to begin with. It's pretty typical that the formula considers somewhere between 30 and 45% of your income to be available to pay for college. So that's where it feels unfair because your assets are actually a really small part of that calculation. But this is where the scammers come in. They make you afraid and they say, come to my workshop because I will figure out what to do with your assets so that they don't show up in the formula. Well, it's not going to make any difference if you already can't afford the college based on what the formula says about your income. You follow me? Okay. So let's not get too complicated about what we're trying to do to hide assets in this calculation when the income is the main thing that's being considered anyway. Yes, sir. Yes, so he's asking about the bottom bullet there on the right side. What does that mean, whether or not your home equity goes into the formula or not? So there's different forms to apply for financial aid. The main form is the FAFSA, that's the federal form. Almost all colleges require the FAFSA. Just know that if you're going to apply for financial aid, you're going to fill out the FAFSA. Additionally, there's 300 colleges. They are the selective colleges, the most selective colleges in this country, the hardest ones to get into, the most expensive ones that have a second form. That second form is called the CSS profile. You are not getting money from the FAFSA people or from the CSS profile people. All these forms do is collect your information and pass it on to the college so that they can run it through the formula. Okay, so when a college additionally asks for the second form, the CSS profile, that's usually a college that's meeting 100% of need, but that CSS profile will go further in delving into your private information. The CSS profile does ask for home equity, and it will take it into consideration. So even at those highly expensive elite colleges, then your home equity does come into that. Okay, so that's what that means. Sometimes there can be two forms for financial aid. Yes, sir. Yes.
The 549 play a lot into that calculation.
So everything on the asset side of this gets calculated the same. The formula does not care if your money's in Procter & Gamble stock, a 529, your mattress, it doesn't matter, okay? It all counts the same. Thank you I just realized as you were asking that I haven't covered, what is that 20%? The 20% number is the percent to which your students' assets are assessed as being available to pay for college. So if your child does have a trust fund or an insurance settlement or, whatever, some big amount of money in the bank, put it in your name, parents, okay? So that it can only be assessed at 5.64% to be available to pay for college. Otherwise, whatever your child has in the bank, and I'm talking about large amounts of money, it's fine for your child to have a few $1,000s in the bank. That's not going to make any difference. But if we're talking about $25,000, $50,000 from something big, that will be assessed at being available as a 20% of that asset per year to be able to pay for college. Yes.
You're in a partnership, how do they assess those assets? You're 50-50 or?
You report your half of the partnership. If you own something that's jointly owned with somebody else, then you report your part of it. Yes, sir.
There's automobiles don't count.
Nope. No, automobiles don't count. Consumer debt is not taken into account. There's a lot of things not taken into account in the formula. These are the only things taken into account. Yeah, I'm going to keep moving because we still have a lot to cover. You guys can ask me some of these questions at the end. All right, this gives you a pretty good detailed idea of what goes into that calculation of whether or not you qualify. Remember, what is the point of this? Let's pull back. Do you qualify for need-based aid? That's what these slides, currently the 7 slides is asking. Do you qualify for need-based aid? Those are all the things that go into helping a college to understand, or the Cal Grant formula or the Pell Grant formula to understand if you qualify for need-based aid. So I already alluded to this earlier. They're going to look at, for seniors, when you go to fill out the forms later on, then you're going to put income from 2 years ago. Now, if your income for 2024 is substantially different than your income from 2023, that's fine. You will write a special circumstance letter about that. If college wants to know about that, they will take that into consideration. But the form forces you to put on the year of income that the form is asking for. So just know that. You have to fill it out with what it's asking for. But, so your income from 2 years ago, but your asset values on the day that you fill out the form. So that's what the forms are going to ask for. And then these are some of the special circumstances that colleges do want to know about and take into consideration, but there's nowhere to detail these on the form. So if you fall into one of these categories, then you will need to write a letter to the financial aid office or email. They don't write letters anymore. You'll send an email to the financial aid office at every single one of the colleges that your child applies to, and let them know about the special circumstances that are taking place within your family. They really, really do want to know. This is where I say, oh, as a financial aid person, I'm a nice person. I want to make it possible for your child to be able to afford college. I'll do what I can to adjust numbers if one of those things applies to you. These are the big special circumstances. There are probably a few others that aren't on here, but these are the standard ones that colleges do want to know about. Okay. All that was spent kind of defining terms. So remember we started back a few slides ago with cost of attendance, then understanding your SAI, your student aid index, all those things go up, whether or not you qualify for aid. Put those things together in an equation, and the resulting number is your financial need. The college uses that financial need to then make a financial aid award. What do you qualify for from that college? Well, it depends on the cost of attendance. As you can see, the top line on all these, so we're going to use a fictitious family whose SAI is determined to be, that means what they can pay, the formula says they can pay for college $10,000. Okay, that's subtracted from the cost of that college. So let's jump to the green category, Cal State San Marcos. Cost of attendance about $25,000. The formula says you can pay 10. You're eligible for $15,000 of aid, but Cal State San Marcos, take your categories, is a state institution that only has Pell Grant, work study, and student loans, no merit aid, because it's a state institution. So if you don't qualify for one of those things and those income ceilings that were defined several slides ago, then even though you qualify for $15,000 of aid at Cal State San Marcos, you won't get it. You'll still be paying full price unless you qualify for one of the government, state or federal government programs. As opposed to, look, orange right under that, let's talk about the most expensive colleges in the country. Your number is still your number. Your student aid index goes with you from college to college. So it matters what the cost of college is. If you apply to Stanford, your child gets in, and the formula says you should pay $10,000 a year, then Stanford is going to give you $80,000 a year of financial aid. No joke. Need-based financial aid, not merit aid. And then all the other colleges fall somewhere into that .1 kind of category where you may or may not get, even if you qualify for aid, your financial aid award is more likely going to look like the one on the right, where they give you a work study job, some student loan, and some of that stackable merit scholarship. Remember the screen from .1 that showed you what your GPA is? This is the amount of money you get. So you get that stackable scholarship, and maybe something else because you're going to play French horn for them, right? And that's what they can do for you. But when you get an award letter, they're going to also drop in there a big fat plus loan. What is a plus loan? That's a parent loan. The P stands for parent. Okay. So they said, look at that, we met your need, your $45,000 need. No, they didn't. They gave you $15,000 free money. $5,500 that you borrow, $2,000 that you can work for, which you can work anywhere. You don't have to take a work study job from a college. You can work anywhere. Okay, you can work at Sprouts or McDonald's or whatever you want to do. Okay, and so you have to take that $60,000 year cost minus $15,000 means you owe $45,000 to the college. Okay, so just be smart when you're reading the award letters that you don't get pulled in by plus loans. Guys, that's not free money. That's money you have to pay back. Okay, and that you understand the different components of the award. So this is what a sample award letter could look like. That's why I put them up here from 2 different kinds of colleges. So parents, you can get a pretty good idea of whether or not you qualify for need-based aid. What is your student aid index going to be? You can run some net price calculators on a college website, or you can go to the College Board website and run their net price calculator. And it will take you about 10 minutes to run one of these. You plug in your income, your assets, and it'll say, have your tax return in front of you. It'll ask you all kinds of questions, and you can plug it in, and you'll get an output. And it'll say, here's what you can be expected to pay at our college. So yay, these are tools to equip you. Use them. Parents, use them. Get a pretty good idea of what a college is going to cost you. How do you find a net price calculator? These are tools that are on every college website, mandated by the government. So just type in name of college followed by net price calculator, and it'll take you right to that page where you can then run that net price calculator. This is worth doing because this is part of that whole planning process. What am I going to be expected to pay for this college? And then have discussions at home, talk about whether or not there's going to be borrowing. And parents, again, I just want to equip you to say, you have the authority to tell your child, this is what we can afford for college. Okay? Don't sacrifice your own future for that. Because there are great colleges that aren't very expensive. Okay, I'm gonna skip most of this. You can read this later, or, you know, on your handouts. I think I've covered most of it anyway. Yeah. And I've already also mentioned this, how do you think about paying for college? Remember that Harvard quote, what you can afford to absorb over time. Okay, what have you saved? What can you contribute out of current earnings? And if there's anything else left that you can't cover, is somebody gonna borrow? Who's gonna borrow and from where? So those are your options for paying for college. You can use a combination of these methods. It's not like you have to be able to write a check for something. So if you have some in the bank that you save for college, but not enough to cover all 4 years, it's great. Divide it in 4. Say, all right, here's a base that we have. And then parents, when your child doesn't live in your house, your bills go down. Okay. Yeah, but you're going to be paying that money to the college instead. Your grocery bill, it's the food bill at the college. But you're not paying for piano lessons or soccer coaches or whatever anymore. So remember that your monthly bill and your house is going to go down. So these are ways that you can think about trying to pay for college. And if you're at this point in the presentation and you're a little scared and going, oh boy, I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, you know, you say, Becky, what are my other options? Really? Is this all there is? No, here's other creative options. If you're thinking like this feels really scary. There are options for saving money, doing something different than having a 4-year residential experience, starting at community college. California has great community colleges with transfer pathways guaranteed to a UC. If you want to know more about that, talk to your counselors here. I'm sure they're very well informed on those things. Can you come in with credit and finish college faster? Or should you even go to college? Have you done some exploration on what an electrician makes or a welder? #1 in-demand job right now, welding. Okay, because of all the windmills that are being built around the country to harness wind power. So the question of whether or not I should borrow money, just know, everybody in the room, students and parents, colleges assume, almost all colleges assume, with the exceptions being literally Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, Yale, and 2 others. All colleges assume that your child will borrow to help pay for college. This is how they have skin in the game. But there's a smart amount of borrowing and a really dumb amount of borrowing. So if you can think about it like that, even the UCs assume that a student is bringing $10,500 to the table. You can make $20,000 a year, and the UCs will still say your child still needs to bring $10,500 to the table, because they're going to take out a $5,500 student loan and they're going to work over the summer $4,500 and bring that to help pay the bill to the UC. You can qualify for Pell Grant, all that other stuff. Your bill at a UC is still going to stop at where you have to pay $10,500. Okay. So just be aware of that going into this whole situation. There are some good reasons why a student could borrow, being a former financial aid professional. So I'll put that hat on for a second and say, you know, again, the college expects your child to borrow. It helps them to establish credit as an adult when they're paying that off. There's a reasonable amount of borrowing that is pay-offable. Probably most of us as parents, if we borrowed a student loan, it's long ago paid off, so we know it's pay-offable, assuming you can get a job. I know that's a big if right now, but it's an investment in their own future, and students who have some skin in the game actually do better grade-wise in college than those who know that mommy and daddy are paying for the whole thing. Okay, so that's another thing to keep in mind. But there's caution for borrowing too, and we'll get to that. But here are some of the details on the student loans. And the parent loans. So the first 2 options, #1 and 2 on the screen, are your student loan options. #3 and 4 are your parent loan options. There are obviously other ways to borrow money, like from rich Uncle Bill, I don't know, or grandma, or you actually can take money out of your retirement funds. It's allowed, penalty-free, to pay for college. Your retirement planner doesn't tell you that because they don't want you to take money out of your 401k either, but it's there, and you can take it out. But in terms of borrowing, these are your main options. The student loans have limits on them, so the limits are those, the 3,500, 4,500, 5,500 that's bold and underlined in the middle, plus an additional $2,000, a couple lines below that, on a different type of loan program, which when you add all that up, is a total of $27,000 of student loan debt for an undergraduate education, which from a financial aid professional standpoint, that's a reasonable amount of debt. Just saying, okay? But the caution against borrowing is that you can get into a zone when you're borrowing too much money. So you really have to use that caution, okay? So if you calculate that a student loan repayment is gonna be about 1% of your total amount of borrowing, so if you borrow that $27,000 maximum, your monthly payment's gonna be about $270 over the course of 10 years. And that, so whatever you're paying back should not exceed 10 to 15% of your of your monthly salary, or the total amount that you borrow should not exceed the average first year salary in your career field. So that's kind of your benchmark if you think about it that way. So what's an average first year salary in your career field? Well, there's a difference obviously between third bullet being a social worker with a very low salary compared to a chemical engineer with a starting salary above 80,000. That gives you a lot more tolerance for borrowing or a lot more caution for borrowing, depending on what you might want to major. So you got to think smartly about your child's abilities, talents, and interests, and plan future in terms of answering that question of, are we going to borrow? So that's kind of how to qualify for aid. Are you going to qualify? You can know how to reasonably know how to qualify, and to think about the whole borrowing part of the picture. Okay. We're in the last part of the presentation. Thank you so much for bearing with me. We're going to talk about how to apply for aid. So, as has already been mentioned, most of the time you are going to be filling out the FAFSA. You fill out the FAFSA to qualify for the government aid, you fill out the FAFSA to qualify for college aid, and then sometimes if it's a college that also requires a CSS profile, you might have to fill that out in addition. The website to apply for the FAFSA is right there. But the problem is, guys, if you're a parent of a senior, the FAFSA is not open yet. Okay, so your child's probably already applying to college, but you can't, right now the FAFSA is scheduled to be open on December 1st. So it's just a couple weeks away. So when it opens, you can hit it and start filling it out. But nobody really knows if it's going to be available on December 1st. If it's not available, don't worry too much, because the FAFSA has undergone major changes in the last year, and it's still not ready. It's still not done. It was a mess last year. Everybody anticipates that it's going to be a mess this year. If it's not ready, it's not ready for anybody in the country. So don't feel like you're behind or you're missing something. You will get plenty of notices from your colleges. Like your child will get tons of emails. So we hope it'll be open on December 1st. That's what they've been promising, but we'll see. So you fill out the FAFSA one time, and then you put in codes for where you're sending that information to all your child's different colleges. And that's all within the FAFSA. So it's pretty self-explanatory. You don't need to, worry about not understanding this form. It tells you exactly what you need, what line of your tax return to get it from, all of that, it's very clear. The bottom bullet is important to pay attention to. You want to make sure that you're filling out the right FAFSA, because there's always two open at any time. So there's a FAFSA open right now for kids who are in college this year. If you're a parent of a senior and you already filled out a FAFSA, you filled out the wrong year. Okay, because the one for next fall isn't open yet. That one is hopefully opening on December 1st. So that's the FAFSA. This is a little bit of information about kind of what to expect for the whole process throughout senior year in terms of admissions and financial aid, kind of working in tandem with each other. There are two different offices in a college campus. Your child will be evaluated for admission separately from being evaluated for financial aid. But it all comes together at the end. If your child's admitted, then they'll get a financial aid award either at the same time or within a week or two after they find out if they're admitted. For the most part, obviously there's maybe some variance to that, but that's your big information there. And then for seniors, you have to decide where you're going to college by May 1st, unless you're going to community college, because then you can enroll at that any time. But for any other university where you have to apply to, then you have to make that decision by May 1st. So if there's an issue with any financial aid along the way, just make sure that you communicate with the financial aid officers at those colleges. All right, I've already talked a little bit about the FAFSA. I'm going to skip ahead on some of this. There's also the California DREAM Act application, which is a form similar to the FAFSA for undocumented families, undocumented students. That's the form that you will fill out for California colleges to go to college in California. This is the information that you will need to gather in order to fill out the FAFSA. Who fills out the FAFSA? In a household, you'll consider if it's a married household of both biological parents, then it'll be those two people's information along with the child information that goes on the form. If parents are divorced, it used to be that whoever the custodial parent was, meaning the parent that the child lived with most of the time, that was the parent who used to be who filled out the form. Now, the new rule that this grand FAFSA redesign that's caused all the problems is that the parent who contributed the most financial support is the one who's supposed to fill out the FAFSA. So whether or not that's a custodial parent in a divorce situation doesn't matter anymore. And if either parent is remarried, that additional step parents information will also go on the form. Okay, so the federal government considers that to be a whole household. Your student cannot be made independent just because you decide, hey, let's just not claim him or her on taxes this year, and then they're on their own. Now the college requires parent information unless your child has met one of these criteria for independency. So they will ask for parent information until your child's 24 or is married, has their own child, is an orphan, a ward of the court, an emancipated minor, homeless, or if your child is a veteran. So if the student is a veteran, then they can, and they're under 24, then they can still qualify for independency. Meaning, all that means, guys, is that all the same information is true for the rest of the presentation, except that the forms won't require parent information. Okay, in terms of what a student would be eligible for, even as an independent student. So to fill out the forms, a lot of technical stuff here. To electronically sign the FAFSA, you have to have something called an FSA ID. I think you have a separate handout on that as well, but it's here on this slide. One parent and the student each need an FSA ID. This is something you can do now. It's open, even though the FAFSA isn't open. Now you can have it done and ready. So circle this page. This is your homework. Go home and get an FSA ID. If you have a student already in college, then and you have an FSA ID, then you don't need to get a new one, parents. But every student needs one. Let's see. This is what the FAFSA website looks like. So if you just type FAFSA.com or FAFSA. I don't know what else you would type, but if you type anything but FAFSA.gov and it doesn't take you here, then you're in the wrong place. So just know this is the website. Anything .gov, you'll be in the right place. Then after you fill out the FAFSA, the information goes to the colleges that you tell it to go to, and it will come back to the student. Parents, not you. You'll never see it again unless your student shares it with you. So your child is considered on their own and an adult, except that you have to provide the information, pay the bill and all that good stuff. But they will never send any information to you as parents anymore. So students, if you're here and listening, just you need to make sure that you send all that info, forward that information on to your parents. Don't ignore it. You need to pay attention to that information. Parents, ask your students for this information. So once it's gone out, then you'll know that it's been processed because you'll get an email telling you it has been processed and you'll get a nice detailed form. I know you can't read that, that's not the point. The point is it's a detailed form that tells you, yay, you've successfully filled out the FAFSA. You want to check the numbers on this form to make sure you filled out the FAFSA right, and you didn't put an extra zero anywhere, that there shouldn't be an extra zero, for example. If there are mistakes made, you can edit the form. Anyway, this is the information on kind of what happens after you fill out the FAFSA. Yes, sir.
You can look it up and do it, or you have.
You do not have to have a new one if you already have an FSA ID. For parents who've used one before. But if you've never done that, you have to create that FSA ID. Okay, now, hopefully you feel more equipped than when you came in an hour and a half ago. You're at the end of the presentation. If you still want some more resources, these are some websites I would recommend that you check out. And talk to your counselors here at Classical Academies, because they are great resources for information. They've been doing their job a long time, and what they're talking about. So just stay off the gossip websites and talk to your counselors or somebody at a college. At a college, 3 sources of information: your counselor, somebody who works at a college, and a college website. Okay, so just be really careful where else you're getting your information from. I saw him. The what?
California Promise.
It's
How I promise. I know there are,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah, for the community colleges in California, you can get the first 2 years for free. It's called Palomar Promise at Palomar, but the California Promise program elsewhere. So we'll give you more information about that in the spring when that time comes, but you'll want to definitely apply for that. And as long as you apply by, I don't remember the date that they give, but by the time you're able to enroll or choose classes, as long as you have everything applied for the Promise program, you should get those.
So no one can get rejected from that?
Not that I'm aware of.
They just have to think full time. Yeah, yeah.
Right, yeah, for a number of units, right. Correct. Yeah, and for that year. And you have to apply during the summer. It's for the coming school year, so you can't apply to start it in January or something like that.
And you have to fill out the FAFSA, yeah.
Correct, yes. And again, we'll give you the information about that in the springtime, but
okay. Last slide is just a friendly reminder. This is me in my high school graduation. Green shag carpet. Guys, it doesn't feel like that long ago. So won't be long before your own children are dealing with this issue for their kids. Freaky to you students in the audience, sorry, but it's a reality. And I just want to give you a couple words of encouragement. Number 1, enjoy your child. Don't make senior year all about the stress of college. Okay. Just enjoy your child. Celebrate the college applications, celebrate the acceptances, celebrate all the things along the way. It's probably the last year of your child living in your home under your 40, so you want them to want to come home later on. And so keep good lines of communication open. There's lots of decisions to be made over the next 8 months in terms of college, and just delight in your children. Delight in your children. Okay. Number 2, my worldview, where I come from, is that I'm a Christian. And I was not a Christian when I went to college, and I became a Christian in college. And I just wanted to share with you that one of the things that I see is a way that I believe God works in my life and in other people's lives is that He uses financial aid and admissions to open and close doors. If you live under a Christian worldview, then take comfort in the fact that God cares for your child more than you do, parents. And so I just want to just pass on that piece of advice as well. Okay, and hopefully that'll bring less stress to this process for you. So Thank you so much for coming. I'll stay around. I'm happy to talk individually and answer some questions. And I hope this has been worthwhile for you. I appreciate your patience with getting started tonight and just have a good evening. Thank you so much.
Thanks for putting up the traffic.
You're welcome.
Which question? Right?
Yeah, come on up, yeah.